Ned Stark stood in the halls of the Red Keep, his mind racing. He had been betrayed. Littlefinger's words still echoed in his ears. "I did warn you not to trust me." The city was against him. The Lannisters had taken control, and his daughters were in danger. Varys had come to him in the dark of night, whispering the unthinkable. "Lord Stark, you must flee. Take your family and run. There is no honor in dying for a lost cause." For the first time in his life, Eddard Stark listened. The night was quiet, but in the shadows, men moved swiftly. Ned gathered his most trusted guards, the few men still loyal to House Stark. He had sent word to his household in the Red Keep. Sansa, Arya, and Septa Mordain were told to be ready. He knew he had little time. The Lannisters would act soon. When the moment came, Ned led his daughters through the secret tunnels beneath the castle, guided by Varys. "The city is not safe for you, my lord," the spider whispered, "but I have arranged a way out." Sansa trembled, confusion and fear in her eyes. "Father, where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Away from here," Ned answered, gripping her hand tightly. "Somewhere safe." Arya, more perceptive, sensed the urgency. "What about Robb? Bran, Rickon, Mother?" "We will send word to them," Ned promised. "But first we must leave King's Landing alive." Varys led them to the docks, where a small ship waited. "This will take you to White Harbor. From there you must ride to Winterfell as fast as you can." Ned hesitated. Leaving meant abandoning his honor, his duty. But looking at his daughters, he knew this was the only way to keep them safe. He nodded. "Thank you, Lord Varys." "Do not thank me, Lord Stark," the eunuch replied. "Just survive." As the ship set sail, Ned Stark looked back at the city. King's Landing had taken too much from him, but it would not take his family. Winterfell was still untouched by war when the Raven arrived. Catelyn Stark unrolled the message with shaking hands. "Fleeing south. Meet us at Riverrun. Trust no one." Her heart pounded. Ned was in danger, but he was alive. Without hesitation, she turned to Maester Luwin. "Send word to Robb. We must ride south." Robb Stark, barely more than a boy, was forced to make a choice. He had been gathering bannermen, preparing to march south to save his father. But now his father was coming to him. "Mother, what do we do?" Robb asked. "We ride to Riverrun," Catelyn said firmly, "and we prepare for war." In King's Landing, chaos erupted when Ned Stark's escape was discovered. Joffrey raged, slamming his fists on the Iron Throne. "Find him, bring me his head." Tywin Lannister, miles away in the Westerlands, received the news with a frown. "Eddard Stark is no fool," he mused. "If he runs, he has a plan." Jaime Lannister, always eager for a fight, smirked. "Let him run. He can't hide forever." But Cersei knew better. If the wolf escapes, he will return with a pack. And she was right. By the time Ned and his daughters reached White Harbor, the North was rising. Lords loyal to House Stark declared for Robb. Messages flew across Westeros. The Lannisters had made an enemy stronger than they imagined. At Riverrun, Ned was reunited with Catelyn, and for the first time in weeks he held his sons. But there was no time for peace. "The Lannisters will come for us," Catelyn warned. "We must be ready." Robb stood tall. "Then we make the first move." The war of the direwolf had begun. The North was alive with the sound of war drums. Banners bearing the direwolf of House Stark flew high, and men sharpened their swords in anticipation. Robb Stark, no longer a boy, but a leader, stood before his bannermen. The Greatjon, Rose Bolton, the Karstarks, the Manderleys, all had answered. The call. Ned watched his son with pride, but also with fear. He had always wanted to shield Robb from this, to let him grow into a man without the stain of war. But the Lannisters had forced their hand. "We march south," Robb declared. "The Lannisters took our home, tried to take our lives. We take the fight to them." The men roared in approval. Ned placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We fight not for vengeance, but for survival," he reminded him. Robb nodded, but his blue eyes burned with determination. In King's Landing, the news of the Stark rebellion reached the Red Keep. Tywin Lannister was furious. "Eddard Stark is no fool. He will not fight an easy war." Joffrey, sitting on the Iron Throne like a child playing king, sneered. "We'll crush them. I want their heads on spikes." Cersei, ever the schemer, silenced him with a look. "Robb Stark leads their army now," she mused. "A boy playing at war. He will make mistakes." But she underestimated him. The first battle came at the Twins. Walder Frey, old and cunning, awaited their arrival. Catelyn knew her father's bannerman well. "He won't let us pass without a price." "Then we give him one," Ned said. Instead of marrying one of Frey's daughters, Robb offered something different, a powerful alliance. "Your sons will be wardens in Winterfell, trained in the ways of the North," he promised. Frey, greedy and ambitious, accepted. The Starks crossed the river unchallenged. It was the first victory of many. In the Westerlands, Tywin gathered his forces. Jaime rode at the head of his army, arrogant and confident. "The boy will come for me," he told his father. And he was right. At the Battle of the Whispering Wood, Robb proved himself. He lured Jaime into a trap, surrounding his forces. The Kingslayer fought fiercely, but in the end he was captured. When Ned saw Jaime in chains, he felt no joy. "You played your game and you lost," he told him. Jaime only smirked. For now, the war had only begun. The North celebrated the capture of Jaime Lannister, but Ned Stark remained uneasy. He had fought in wars before. He knew that no single victory ended a war. The Lannisters were like a wounded lion, more dangerous than ever. Robb, however, was full of fire. "We have their best sword in chains. We should push forward," he urged. Catelyn frowned. "Tywin Lannister will not let this go unanswered. And Joffrey still holds Sansa hostage in King's Landing." At the mention of Sansa, Ned's heart ached. His eldest daughter was still in the hands of their enemies. He had to get her back. "We send word," Ned decided. "A trade, Jaime Lannister for Sansa and Arya." The message was sent, but in the red. "Keep," Cersei Lannister laughed when she read it. "Do they think me a fool?" she scoffed. "Jaime is my brother. Sansa is just a stupid girl." But Tyrion, now acting as Hand of the King, considered it carefully. "Sansa is valuable to us," he admitted. "A hostage can be a powerful tool. But if we refuse, the North will never make peace." Joffrey, in his cruelty, made the choice for them. He had Sansa brought before the court and declared, "She is a traitor's daughter. We do not make deals with traitors." Then, to prove his power, he had her beaten in front of the court. The message was clear. There would be no peace. When the Raven returned with the Lannisters' answer, Ned gripped the parchment with shaking hands. They had refused. Sansa was still their prisoner. Robb's rage was uncontrollable. "Then we march to King's Landing," he declared. "No," Ned said firmly. "Not yet." The North was strong, but the Lannisters had the numbers. Charging into the heart of their power would be suicide. Ned had learned patience from war. He knew they needed a different strategy. "We will take the Riverlands first," he told Robb. "We will secure our allies, build our strength, and when the time is right, we will bring down the Lannisters." The young wolf nodded. He would listen to his father, and so the North did not rush into battle blindly. They played the long game, but in the shadows, another war was being fought. Varys, ever the Whisperer, moved through the halls of the Red Keep. He watched as Joffrey grew more reckless, as Cersei lost control, as Tyrion tried to keep the kingdom from falling apart, and he saw Sansa Stark, bruised but unbroken. "Little bird," he whispered when he visited her in secret. "Do you wish to fly away?" Sansa's blue eyes, once full of innocence, now burned with something else. "Yes," she whispered. Varys smiled. "Then let us see what we can do." The game was still in play. The war raged on. But Ned Stark was not the same man who had once believed in honor above all else. The betrayal in King's Landing had taught him a brutal lesson. Sometimes survival meant bending the rules. The North had secured the river lands, forging a powerful alliance with House Tully. Riverrun stood as a stronghold for the Starks, a place where they could plan their next move. Robb had won another victory against the Lannisters at Oxcross, further proving himself as the young wolf. But none of it mattered to Ned as much as the fate of his daughter. Sansa was still trapped in King's Landing. The Lannisters had refused to exchange her for Jaime, and now they had made their answer clear. They would never let her go willingly. "We cannot wait any longer," Ned told his council. "We must get her out." Catelyn placed a hand on his arm. "How? She is surrounded by enemies." "We have friends in the city," he said. "Not many, but enough." And so he sent a raven with a message, written in code, meant only for one person, Varys. In the Red Keep, Sansa woke in the middle of the night to the sound of whispers. "Little bird," the voice said, smooth as silk, "the time has come to fly." Varys stood in the shadows, a hood covering his face. He placed a key in her trembling hands. "You must leave now," he instructed. "Do not look back. A man waits for you at the docks. He will take you north." Sansa's heart pounded. Was this real? Could she really escape? She nodded, swallowing her fear, and so she ran. At dawn, a raven arrived at Riverrun. Ned unrolled the message with shaking hands. "She is free. She's coming home." A deep breath filled his lungs. His daughter was safe, but the war was far from over. In the Westerlands, Tywin Lannister was growing impatient. "Enough of these games. We must end this war before it destroys us." Cersei, however, was still furious. "They stole Sansa from us. They humiliated us." Tywin scoffed. "She was never the key to our power." He turned to his generals. "March on the Riverlands. We will crush them before they can grow stronger." The Lannisters would not stop, and neither would the Starks. At Riverrun, the Stark forces prepared for the next battle. Sansa arrived, exhausted and thin but alive. Ned held her tightly, whispering, "You're safe now, little one." But Sansa, once a girl who dreamed of knights and golden-haired princes, was no longer the same. She had seen the true face of power. She had survived, and in her heart she swore she would never be a pawn again. The war had changed them all. Sansa sat by the window of Riverrun, staring at the river below. She was free, but she didn't feel like the same girl who had once believed in songs and chivalry. The bruises Joffrey had left on her body had faded, but the ones inside her still lingered. Ned Stark saw it in her eyes. She had learned the hardest lesson of all. Innocence had no place in the Game of Thrones. "We will go home," he promised. "Or one evening, to Winterfell," but she only shook her head. "Winterfell is not the same without Bran and Rickon." Ned's heart ached. He had sent ravens, but there had been no word from his youngest sons. The Boltons still held the Dreadfort, and the Ironborn raided the coasts. The North was not safe, not yet. And now, the Lannisters were coming. Tywin Lannister had made his move. His army marched from the Westerlands, burning every village in their path. Ned gathered his council. "We must hold Riverrun," he said. "If we lose it, we lose our hold on the Riverlands." Robb nodded. "Then we fight." But Roose, Bolton, ever the quiet observer, spoke up. "Tywin is a cunning man. He will not waste his strength on a siege. He will try to break us from within." Ned knew he was right. "We must be smarter," Ned said. "We cannot fight them head-on. We will make them come to us." And so they prepared their defenses. When the Lannisters arrived, they found a fortress ready for war. Jaime Lannister, still a prisoner, watched the battle unfold from his cell. "They think they can win," he mused. "They don't know my father." But he underestimated the Starks. The Riverlords, led by Edmure Tully, cut off the Lannister supply lines. The Northmen ambushed their scouts in the night. Wolves howled in the darkness, and fear crept into the hearts of the invaders. Then, one fateful night, the Starks struck. Under the cover of darkness, Ned led a force out of Riverrun, striking at the Lannister camp. Fires erupted and chaos followed. The Golden Lions, so used to victory, found themselves retreating. By dawn, the battle was over. The Lannisters had lost, and Tywin Lannister, for the first time in years, was forced to retreat. The war had turned, but even in victory, Ned knew the fight was not over. "The Lannisters will return," he told Robb. "And when they do, we must be ready." Robb, standing tall among his bannermen, met his father's gaze. "We will be." In the north, winter was coming, and the Starks were ready. The victory at Riverrun sent shockwaves through Westeros. The mighty Tywin Lannister, the man who had crushed rebellions and outmaneuvered kings, had been forced to retreat. It was a wound to the Lannisters' pride, but Ned Stark knew it would not be their last move. Back in Riverrun, preparations were already underway. The war was far from over. Sansa sat beside Catelyn as the council discussed their next steps. She was no longer the girl who had dreamed of golden-haired knights. She had seen the truth. Power belonged to those who took it. "We cannot stay here forever," Edmure Tully said. "Riverrun is strong, but it is not Winterfell. We should strike while Tywin is wounded." Robb nodded. "We should march on Harrenhal. It is the key to the Riverlands." Rose Bolton, always calculating, spoke in his usual, measured tone. "Harrenhal is held by the Mountain. He will not surrender easily." Ned knew this war was different from Robert's rebellion. There was no single battle that would decide the fate of the realm. This was a war of attrition, strategy, and survival. But then, a raven arrived, and the message it carried would change everything. Winterfell had fallen. Theon Greyjoy, once a friend, had betrayed them. The Ironborn had stormed the castle, taking it for themselves. And worse, Bran and Rickon were missing. Ned gripped the letter, his hands shaking. "My sons!" Catelyn's face went pale. "We must take it back," she said, her voice filled with fury. Robb, too, was burning with anger. "I trusted Theon. He was my brother." The betrayal cut deeper than any Lannister blade. But Ned, through the pain, forced himself to think clearly. If we march north now, we lose the war in the south. Tywin will regroup and strike again. The choice was impossible: fight for the north or hold their ground. In the end, the decision was made. "You take Harrenhal," Ned told Robb. "I will go north." Catelyn grabbed his arm. "You cannot go alone." "I won't be alone," he said. "I will take the Riverlords who remain loyal and the men of the north who long for home." Sansa, listening quietly, finally spoke. "I will go too." Ned turned to her, shocked. "No, Sansa, you are safest here." But she met his gaze, unflinching. "I have been a prisoner long enough. I will not hide while my home burns." For the first time, Ned saw the woman she was becoming. He nodded. "Then we go together." As the armies split, two wolves marched toward their fates. Robb Stark, the young wolf, headed to war in the south. Ned Stark, the last true warden of the north, returned home. The game was not over. It was just beginning. The road north was long and treacherous. Ned Stark led a force of hardened Northmen and Riverlords, their banners flying high, despite the sorrow in their hearts. Winterfell had been taken. Bran and Rickon were missing, and the man who had done it, Theon Greyjoy, was once considered. The family, Sansa, rode beside her father. She had left Riverrun a girl, but each mile toward home made her something else, stronger, sharper. She had suffered at the hands of the Lannisters, but she would not suffer again. As they crossed into the North the air grew colder, the men were hardened by the chill, but Ned found comfort in it. The South had never felt like home, but home was in the hands of traitors. At Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy sat uneasy on the stolen seat of House Stark. He wore the direwolf sigil over his iron-born armor, but it didn't feel right. The castle walls seemed to whisper against him. The people looked at him with hatred. He had won Winterfell, but he had not earned it. Dagmar Cleftjaw, one of his father's most trusted men, warned him, "You hold this castle with a handful of men. The North will not forget what you have done." Theon scoffed, trying to hide his fear. Let them come. But he was afraid of what would happen when Ned Stark returned, because Theon knew one thing above all else. There was no place in this world more dangerous than the North when a Stark was coming home. The closer Ned got to Winterfell, the more banners joined him. The North was rising. House Umber, House Manderley, House Serwyn, all loyal to the Starks, all furious at what had been done to their home. At Moat Cailin, they stopped to gather their strength. "We will take back what is ours," Ned told them. "We will show the world that the North does not kneel." The men roared in approval. Sansa watched, her heart pounding. She was seeing her father not as the man who once tucked her into bed, but as the true warden of the North, a leader, a warrior, and she was ready to fight too. The siege of Winterfell began at dawn. Theon stood on the battlements, watching the banners approach from the distance. Direwolves, stags, the kraken of his own house, but not in his favor. He had no chance. But pride and fear drove him to resist. "Loose arrows," he commanded, but his voice lacked strength. The North did not falter. The gates were broken. The walls were breached. Theon's men, knowing they were outmatched, surrendered one by one. And then Ned Stark rode through the gates of Winterfell once more. Theon was dragged before him, beaten and bloodied. "Ned," he gasped, as if the man he had once called father would show him mercy. But Ned Stark was no longer the man who had raised Theon Greyjoy. "You took my home," Ned said, voice like ice. "You betrayed my family." Theon swallowed. "I never meant—" Ned did not let him finish. "Take him to the dungeons." Theon Greyjoy had played the Game of Thrones, and he had lost. Winterfell was theirs once more, but it was not the home they had left behind. The walls were scorched, the halls were empty, and Bran and Rickon were still missing. Sansa walked through the ruined castle, feeling the ghosts of the past. She had dreamed of coming home, but now she realized home was not a place, it was the people, and some of them were still gone. "We will find them," Ned promised. "We will make our home whole again." But deep down he knew war was not done with them yet, and winter was still coming. The halls of Winterfell echoed with silence. The fires had been rekindled, the banners of House Stark flown once more, but the castle did not feel the same. Theon Greyjoy had taken it, but he had not held it. The North had taken it back, but at what cost? Bran and Rickon were still missing. Sansa stood at the broken gates, staring out into the frozen land beyond. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times while she was trapped in King's Landing. She had dreamed of coming home, of feeling safe again, but now that she was here, it did not feel like home at all. Beside her, her father stood tall, his face carved from stone. He had reclaimed his home, but the war was not over. Not yet. In the great hall, the lords of the North had gathered. "The Ironborn are weak," Lord Manderley said. "We should drive them from our shores and make them pay for what they have done." "The Boltons still hold the Dreadfoot," Greatjon Umber added. "We cannot trust them. Rose may have fought beside us, but his son is another matter." Ned listened carefully. The North had always been strong, but now it was fractured. If they did not unite, they would be easy prey for the Lannisters or any other southern ambition. Robb had taken Harrenhal. The Riverlands were secure for now, but the war was far from over. "We will deal with the Ironborn," Ned finally said, "and we will bring Bran and Rickon home." The men nodded, but the tension in the room remained, and outside, the snow continued to fall. Far away in the Dreadfort, Ramsay Bolton smiled as he read the news. "The Starks think they have won," he mused. "How foolish." He turned to the small figures chained in the corner of his chambers. "Winterfell belongs to me now," he whispered, "and I will take it back." Bran and Rickon Stark, cold and terrified, watched him with wide eyes. The war was not over, not yet. The night was cold in Winterfell, colder than it had ever felt before. Snowflakes drifted from the dark sky, covering the broken walls and scorched towers in a blanket of white. The castle had been reclaimed, but it was still wounded, and so were the Starks. Ned stood on the battlements, staring into the distance. Somewhere out there, Bran and Rickon were lost. He had dreamed of bringing his family back together, but the gods had other plans. His sons were still in danger, and his enemies still lurked in the shadows. "We must move quickly," he said to Robb and his gathered lords. "Ramsay Bolton is a mad dog, and Rose is a man who serves only himself. If we do not act first, they will strike at us." Roose Bolton had sent word, pledging loyalty to House Stark, but Ned knew better than to trust him. The Dreadfort had always been a place of cruelty, and Rose's bastard was even worse than his father. "We ride at dawn," Robb declared. "We take back our brothers." The hall erupted in agreement. The North would not sit idle while its own blood was held captive. But Sansa watched in silence, her hands clenched into fists. She had been powerless in King's Landing, a pawn in the game of lords and kings. But she was home now, and she would never be a pawn again. She would find a way to make the Boltons pay. At the Dreadfort, Ramsay Bolton sat in his chamber sharpening his blade. The news of Winterfell's fall did not concern him. He had taken something far more valuable than a castle. He had Stark blood in his hands. Bran and Rickon were locked away in the darkness below, starving, freezing, afraid. "You should be grateful," Ramsay told them, his voice dripping with amusement. "Father wants to use you as bargaining tools. But me, I want to play." Rickon growled like a wild thing. "Robb will come for us, my father will come." Ramsay only laughed. "I hope so," because he had a trap waiting, and when the Starks came, he would make sure they regretted it. At dawn, the North rode to war once more. The banners of House Stark, House Manderley, House Umber, and others stretched as far as the eye could see. This was not a battle for politics. It was a battle for family. Robb led from the front, his direwolf Grey Wind at his side. Beside him, Ned rode in silence, his face unreadable, and in the middle of the army, Sansa rode as well. She was done waiting in the shadows. The Starks were coming, and this time they would make sure their enemies remembered why the North had always been feared. The North rode as one, banners fluttering in the icy wind. Wolves, mermen, and bears, sigils of houses sworn to the Starks, stretched in an unbroken line across the snow-covered hills. The war was no longer just about the throne in King's Landing. It was about vengeance. It was about blood. It was about bringing Bran and Rickon home. Ned Stark rode at the head, his face grim. The North was strong, but war had already taken too much from him. He had fought alongside Robert Baratheon against the Mad King years ago, but this war felt different. This time, it was his own children who were suffering. Beside him, Robb was silent, his anger like a storm, held back only by the discipline his father had taught him. Grey Wind padded along the snow, a shadow of death waiting to be unleashed. But it was Sansa who had changed the most. She rode between them, her red hair braided tightly, her face cold as the wind. She had left Winterfell a girl who believed in songs. She had returned a woman who understood war, and this time she was not going to sit back and let others decide her fate. The Dreadfort lay ahead, and with it, Ramsay Bolton. Inside the Dreadfort, Ramsay was waiting. He stood atop the walls, watching the banners approach with a twisted smile. He had expected the Starks to come. He had wanted them to come. "The Starks always think they are wolves," he muttered to Reek, the broken man who had once been Theon Greyjoy. "But they are just sheep in the end." Bran and Rickon were still his prisoners, locked in the cold, dark cells below, and if things did not go his way, well, he had a knife ready. "Let them come," Ramsay whispered. "I am ready to skin a wolf." The battle began at nightfall. Ned had learned long ago that honor meant little when facing monsters. There would be no drawn-out siege, no warnings, no mercy. The North struck fast, their forces crashing into the Dreadfort's gates like a tidal wave. Grey wind led the charge, his howls filling the frozen air. The Boltons fought savagely, but they had never faced the full wrath of the North. The Manderleys came with their heavy cavalry, smashing through the defenders like a hammer through glass. The Umbers, wild and furious, climbed the walls with axes in hand, and in the chaos, Ned Stark himself rode through the broken gates of the Dreadfort, his sword dripping with blood. "Find my sons!" he roared. Sansa, moving through the battlefield with her own guard, looked toward the high tower. She knew where Ramsay would be, and she was going to face him herself. Deep in the dungeons, Bran and Rickon heard the sounds of war above. For the first time in weeks, they had hope. "The North," Bran whispered. "They're here." Rickon grinned through the dirt and bruises. "Father is coming." On the top floor of the Dreadfort, Sansa Stark stepped into Ramsay Bolton's chambers. He was waiting for her. "You look different, little." "Udov," Ramsay said, grinning, a knife twirling between his fingers. "Did King's Landing finally teach you how to survive?" Sansa did not answer. She had spent too long being afraid. She simply picked up the nearest dagger. Ramsay's smile faltered. For the first time, he saw something he had never expected to see in her. A wolf. The fires of battle raged outside, the banners of House Stark. Flying high above the walls of the Dreadfort, the Northern army had stormed the fortress, cutting down Bolton men like they were nothing. The war was nearly over. But inside, in the dim candlelight of Ramsay Bolton's chambers, a different battle was about to be fought. Sansa stood before Ramsay, a dagger gripped tightly in her hand. She had spent too long as a victim. Not anymore. Ramsay smirked, twirling, his own blade between his fingers. "Do you really think you can kill me, little dove?" he mocked. "You're still just a frightened girl playing at war." Sansa stepped closer. Her hands did not shake. "I was frightened once," she said, her voice steady. "But fear is a cage, and I am done being caged." Ramsay lunged first, but Sansa had learned from her suffering. She moved faster than he expected, dodging his attack, slicing at his arm. The blade bit into his flesh, drawing blood. Ramsay's grin twisted into something darker. "You have claws. Now," he hissed. "Good. I like it when they fight back." Sansa did not waste time with words. She struck again. This time she aimed for his throat. Ramsay barely deflected the attack, stumbling back. He was realizing too late that this was not the same girl he had imagined her to be. This was a Stark, and Stark blood did not break easily. Down below in the dungeons, Ned Stark's sword cut through the last of the Bolton guards. He rushed forward, kicking open the heavy iron door. Inside, huddled together, were his sons. Bran and Rickon looked up, their eyes wide. "Father." Bran's voice was barely a whisper. Ned dropped to his knees, pulling them both into his arms. "I'm here," he whispered. "You're safe now." For the first time in what felt like years, the Stark family was whole again, but the war was not finished yet. "Where is Sansa?" Bran asked. Ned's blood ran cold. Ramsay was bleeding now, his confidence shattered. He tried to strike again, but Sansa was faster. With one last step, she drove her dagger deep into his chest. Ramsay gasped, eyes wide in disbelief. His hands clutched at the blade, his smirk finally gone. Sansa leaned in close, her voice as cold as the northern wind. "You were wrong," she whispered. "I am not your little dove. I am a wolf." And with that she twisted the blade. Ramsay Bolton collapsed to the floor, choking on his own blood. The battle was over. The Starks had won. When Ned found Sansa, she was standing over Ramsay's lifeless body, her hands covered in blood. For a moment, she looked like a stranger to him. But when she turned, her blue eyes met his, and he saw his daughter again. She had survived, she had fought, and she had won. Ned stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. "It's over," he murmured. Sansa exhaled, closing her eyes. She had dreamed of revenge for so long. Now it was real, and yet the world kept moving. Winterfell was restored, the banners of House Stark flying high once more. The North had reclaimed its home. Bran and Rickon were safe. Robb ruled as king in the North. Sansa had proven that she was no longer a pawn, but a player in the game. And Ned Stark, who had once been destined to die in King's Landing, stood among his family, watching, as the North prepared for the true war to come, because beyond the wall something darker was stirring, and winter was still coming.